Hey guys, it's Blake again, back at you with my 2014 Jeep Wrangler 4-wheel drive Sport Unlimited. Today we're going to be doing a temperature sensor and thermostat. Thermostat is one complete housing. It's not like a typical take it off, remove the thermostat, put the new one in, close the housing back up. It's a whole setup. But we're going to get started with the coolant temperature sensor because I have the P0128 code. It's coolant temperature fault basically. But yeah, anyways, what we're gonna do is start with taking off your wheel. Depends on what kind of wheel you have. Should be a 19, and then you take a spliney deal, take that off. But more importantly, I wanted to show you basically how to get to it. So if you look at the top engine bay, you could maybe finagle it down there, but basically it's way down. See that red connector that's disconnected? Right there is the one that I unplugged from it. I basically started this a little bit late, but I just want to walk you through it step by step what I've done so far. So once you do that, you're going to get yourself a pry tool, something like this or like this. I used a combination of the two, and you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ones missing because it had to be extracted with pliers, and then you're going to have 4 of these. These are basically going to be in your fender right here. Sorry. In your fender spot. There, and there. You only have to do 4 of them, which are going to be on this side of the fender. There's going to be one here, one there, one there, one there. And you're going to basically, see there's like a little dimple guy in there. You're going to use a punch. I used this guy, which is a 1/8 punch. And you're just going to basically simply put it in there and tap it with a hammer, and it'll pop out, and then you'll be able to get your liner off, and then your liner will just kind of pull off. There's a clip here that fits into the end of this guy, which is the side of your liner, and it'll just slide off right there. Set that off to the side, and then you have access to your connector. So this is where it sits right here. Make sure your car is not hot, because this is your catalytic converter and you'll burn the crap out of your hand. Take a flathead and you're going to basically pull up on this red deal, and then compress that black piece, and then it'll come right off. And then try to just push it up out of your way, but it'll be that guy where the pigtail is unplugged. And then it's going to be a 19 mil, and you take that off there. Make sure you have a bucket to collect coolant, because it'll puke a little bit out, but shouldn't do a whole lot. And then just have some rags on standby. And I guess one side note, it's kind of obvious, but you do have to jack your car up off the ground, and make sure you, if you're on an inclined slope, you chalk your back wheel. And I always put my wheel that I take off underneath my vehicle just as an extra precaution. And then I have a jack stand, and the jack, you're not supposed to let it rest on it. I'm not a professional. Choose to do what you want to do, but I usually run it that way and have the jack there to catch it, as well as the tire if something did happen. I bleed my floor jacks all the time, so I know that they're in working condition and safe, but do it at your own risk. I am not a professional. Again, I'm just a DIY guy trying to help you see how to do it so that you can save some money instead of taking it to a mechanic. Anyways, back to it. I'm going to break that loose and then see what happens. Originally I was going to be using a open-end wrench, but as you fit it on there between the catalytic converter and it, you don't really have much room. So this is the new one. I'm going to apply some thread locker on it as a sealant, as well as locking those threads in. I'm going to use a extended socket, and I'm going to use one of my favorite tools from Harbor Freight, which is this ratchet. And then you basically pull this guy, and it extends out to give you more leverage, so there you have more torque on that when you're loosening it, and it also extends it out to where you can use it and maneuver it. So yeah, side note, pro tip. I don't know if this is going to work very well, but I'm going to attempt to show you as I do it one-handed. So you're going to get some coolant that's going to puke out of there. That's okay. Try to relieve the pressure slowly, and you'll get minimal leakage. Before you put the new one in, I always like to clean the area that you're remounting a piece to, just to get a little bit of dirt and grime off of it. And I put a little bit of thread locker on there. This bolt was very loose, well, not very loose, but didn't take much. You're just going to thread it in by hand. Definitely don't want to cross thread something like this. And you're going to put it on there, put your socket back on, and snug it up. And that's it. And then you're going to take your connector piece. Now it's going to be backwards, so that's exciting. And you're going to push it back down on it. It should snap in place, and then make sure you push that red piece back down. It might take a little bit of wiggle to get it in there, but that red piece needs to go back down. Well, let's see if I get you prop back up there. Oh, we didn't want to zoom in that far. Anyways, it doesn't go down very far. It's going to be up here. That's all you got to do on it. And then it's basically in place, even though it's facing away from you. It's all the way seated. Give it a tug, make sure it doesn't come off, and then re-loop this guy back through this, just so it doesn't burn on your catalytic converter. And that's all you got to do. And then you got to do the reverse steps and put it all back together. Hopefully I can show you how these guys go back on the fender, and should wrap it up. Okay, so fender line back in. It's kind of a fend angle. You got to put this side kind of hooked in first and then set it in and come over there. This is where like the fender kind of lines up and hooks in right there. I replaced this guy with a new I don't know what you call it, one of these, that 1/4 6.4. This is from Harbor Freight, I believe. Look, yeah, from Harbor Freight. Great set. If you don't have one, you should get one, because you never know when you're gonna need it. Replace that one. This one was still kind of good, so I reused it. Replace that one, reuse that one, replace that one. You also have this 10 mil. Don't forget to put that back on. That holds on the bulk part of this bottom portion. I was able to reuse one of these by extending it. Sorry, I keep cutting out, but by extending it like this and pushing this down, pushing through the hole, and then on the back side, pushing this back side down so it popped back through on this hole right here, because you can get your finger all the way behind it. But these ones I ended up using the same guy. I'm gonna order some new Jeep Mopar ones to hopefully replace these three, but for now I think that'll work. So we're gonna go move on to the thermostat next and go on from there, and put your tire back on, of course. You can always start it and check it for leaks while you have everything apart, but I'm fairly confident in my work. So we're gonna put the tire back on, torque it down to spec, and then move on to thermostat. All right, moving on to the thermostat. You've probably seen this a million times, but basically you're gonna have, should be a 10 mil. You undo this guy, and then it takes you down to your thermostat, which is right there. And there should be two 10 mils, one on the top, one on the bottom. I'm also gonna do my top hose as well, because this is probably the factory hose that came with it. And I'm either gonna reuse these, see how they feel, or put new hose clamps on it, like worm drive ones. And yeah, so I'm gonna take this hose off and I'll show you where the bolts are on the thermostat. Again, this is 2014 Jeep Wrangler. Correction, you're gonna have two. You're gonna have one here, one there. I always like to have magnetic tray sitting by so you don't lose anything. You lift this up, you're gonna have a sensor right here. You should be able to hopefully single-handedly pull that off there. It'll look like that. You can let it kind of hang there and just set this off to the side. And yeah, this is where your thermostat sits. It's this little housing right here. It's all plastic, so be very gentle with it. You don't want to break anything. There's a 10 mil on the top and the bottom right there. And as you can see here, mine has some corrosion on it, so it probably has a leak in it somewhere. And it's probably leaking all over the place slowly, or it's a slow leak. Anyways, hopefully this will solve that P0128 code. But yeah, this is your hose. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my my new hose and my new thermostat together, like kind of how this is all set up already. You have it coming this way up and then over to here to your radiator. I'm going to put it all together so that I can just slot it on there so I don't have to reach my hands in there and try to tighten one of those down, and then I'll be good to go. So make sure you have a bucket under there for coolant. I need to scoot mine over, of course, but it's all going to drip straight down there. So just be prepared for that. Try to catch it. You don't want that going back into the environment, or animals can ingest it and it can be bad for them. So don't do that. Just be mindful and be very careful with picking up all your stuff. So I broke those two free. They're going to look like this. There's going to be one there, one there. But I like to try to let it slowly drip out. It's kind of messy and it's kind of going everywhere, but I'm catching most of it, so that's pretty good. And basically you're gonna take it and just pull straight out, and there's gonna be more that'll come out of that. And then you also want to look down in there and make sure there's no gunk in there. And then this gasket also needs to come off. That's the old one. And then you want to take a razor blade and just go over that, or a paper towel, and just clean that surface up. Do not use any grinder or anything to clean that up any further. It's great the way it is. Just clean it off. All right, for this next portion, I always use like a pair of alligator pliers, and basically it just looks like this. Squeeze them and then move it to the side. And then you're going to want to hold on to this because there's going to be a little bit coolant left in it, but just give it like a little shimmy, shimmy, shimmy. Go like that. And then remember, there's going to be a little bit of coolant left in here because the thermostat over here will be closed, so it'll collect fluid in there. So if I can, I'm going to attempt to do this. Whoa. Hey, yo, still with me. Still with me. Struggle bus. Anyways, going to dump it in there, as you heard there. Get rid of the rest of the coolant, slide the pan back under, and of course, you know, you got that American flag for freedom in the background because nothing's better than America. As I'm driving a Pinstar motor, yeah. Anyways, that's it. I'm gonna take this clamp off, and then I took this clamp off, and then I'll set up with the new thermostat. Got cut off, but I'll be setting up the new thermostat with the new tube, and then I'll show you snaking it back in. I'm also going to go ahead and clean that surface up and put it all back together. Stand by. So one thing I did do is I tried to put my hose on my thermostat right and tried to index it, but I had the hose flip-flop. So I had the radiator side on this side, and I went to put it in. I'm like, it's not lining up. So depending on what hose you have, this is a Gates hose. I love Gates. They have probably the best hoses as far as thickness level and as far as wall support inside, but basically mine went this way, so this side without the heat protector on it towards the bottom was on this side. Make sure you index this little cap breather valve up to help bleed the system, and yeah, it goes on that way. I cleaned up the face of that, so it's kind of clean. I need to do the bottom a little bit more, it looks like. I'm gonna put it back together, and next we'll be tightening it down. Those bolts, the top one there and the bottom one there, were not very tight, so I just go hand tight and maybe squeak past it. There is torque specs in your manual or on Google, and you can look up the torque specs for it. It's probably like 20 foot-pounds, if that. But don't break that off because the housing is plastic and you don't want to break anything. And then just make sure when you have your hose on it, there's little ears on here, butt it all the way against it all the way around. Sometimes hoses are not cut perfectly straight, so just make sure it's butted against it and make sure it's plenty tight. There's basically a beveled edge here and then here. I always try to put the hose clamp here in the middle and try to clamp it down. This is a brand new hose clamp, of course, Harbor Freight, because I'll get all my stuff from them. But yeah, just a nice little hose clamp there, and then put together, and I'll pick up in just a second. All right, we got the thermostat back in. Like I said, don't overkill these. There's a gasket in there, so just tight, and then maybe a quarter turn, if that, just to snug those down. Make sure you put this back on, or else you're going to leak from there when you go to start everything up. My coolant reservoir still has some coolant in it, so that's great. But you're going to take your top off, and then you're going to have to add more coolant after you bleed the system. So, yeah. But now my cap doesn't want to come off, so that's cool. Anyways, just do the reverse. Basically put this back on, reconnect this, put your 2 bolts back on, and then tighten that down, button it back up, and then start it up. All right, it's all back together. I started it up. You can buy one of these at AutoZone or online. Basically, you want to find the correct fitting. Mine was kind of fandangled, so if you want to find one specifically for Jeeps, that's fantastic. This is going to work. You have a plunger or stopper to go in there when you're done. You put it in there so that when you take it out, you don't make a mess. I'm using deck school. It says Chrysler 13 and newer. Technically, the Pinstar is a Chrysler motor, so I'm using that. This is what I run in pretty much this and my Silverado that my wife is driving. But basically, you want to fill this up to about here, maybe a little bit more, and basically check for leaks. Make sure your thermostat opens up and watch your temperature. So I'm going to be jumping back and forth. I'm not going to be recording the whole time, but you want to watch your temperature. Watch this, make sure this doesn't go dry, make sure your temperature doesn't skyrocket, and then every once in a while just give your hoses, because by pumping your hoses like this, you actually pump air out of your system, even though this is your top hose of your radiator. If you can reach it down to the bottom hose, that'd be ideal. So I might go underneath and just squeeze it a couple times, but just jump back and forth, watch your temperature, refill this, and then after a while, most of this will get sucked down in there once the thermostat opens up, and it'll take a couple cycles of that kicking on and off to basically bleed the whole system out of bubbles, because bubbles equals overheating. You don't want to do that. But yeah, that's basically it. So as the thermostat opens, it'll pop a bunch of bubbles like this, and sometimes you can overflow this, but most of the time it'll get sucked back down in there. But just want to keep an eye on that level, and the bubbles will keep coming out, and it'll take all the fluid it needs, going down a little bit, and it'll pump more bubbles out. And you want it to cycle a couple times, probably like 3 or 4 times, to make sure it has enough coolant and you don't have air bubbles. And the check engine code is gone. Solving the P0128 code. I have a code reader, and I cleared just the what they call the emissions code that pops up for it. But the other check engine light will probably stay on for a little bit. But once you start it and turn it off and then drive it a little ways, it should automatically shut off. The system has to go back through and re-diagnose itself as it does automatically. So it takes a little bit of time to do that, but it should go away. But again, I did the coolant temperature sensor and thermostat along with the upper hose, because the upper hose kind of looked gross. So I did it. You don't have to do it, but thanks again for joining me on a DIY with Blake, and hope you found it useful in some way or some form. If not, like and subscribe, and I'll create more videos about it. Have a good day.